have to adapt fast if it turns out that they were wrong.
Well, let's find out what our first Battleground in 2018 will be as our teams have decided where they want to go. Choice will be BOE here as Zealots will pick up the Battleground, meaning that we'll go ahead and have Tricked Esports with their first pick here. Now, bans, looks like Brax's Holdout as well as Cursed Hollow will not be picked up during this Best of 5 series.
Yeah, so Zealots with a ban on Braxis and also with the first pick for BOE. So that's actually already really interesting since BOE was for ADRD's team, for Team Expert in the past season, always a map where they were first of all strong, but also where when they were leaning toward more aggressive playstyles or aggressive drafts, they oftentimes drafted hyper-aggressive compositions in the first quarter, I would say, of last year. Even Kerrigan, for example, and they really try to bring the fight to the opponent, and it's one of the strengths of the Battleground that you can brawl all day.
It's one of the Battlegrounds where it feels like a little that oddness that you get from ADRD came out. We saw the Chromie W build, we also saw Probius picked up as well with Photon Cannons to shred down the Immortal, so always expect fun things when you have ADRD up in the mix-up when it comes to BOE. On the other side, Zealous having Chris here, this is a Battleground where he may go to one of his favorites from the past, Hungering Arrow, Vala.
Yeah, and an interesting part about what we are seeing there is also that if you think about it, when ADRD was on Expert, when they started, they were really known for those oddity drafts where they always came in with a completely different game plan, where they were trying to exploit weaknesses of their opponents during the draft. But all these odd picks and those curveballs that they threw started to disappear as the team became more and more stable. And they said, okay, we feel more confident with the meta right now. We feel we can defeat teams in different ways. Now that he's on Zealots, on the other hand, that might have changed again. Maybe they're relying again on these draft picks that are designed to throw the opponent off.
Well, it's time to find out here. Now with this Battleground, we always go for those single target DPS type of heroes. See Greymane, Vala picked up. Hanzo, also wonderful in this Battleground if you are speccing into full W build. The Scatter Arrow actually deletes those Immortals insanely fast post level 7, which is something that we've seen a lot. I believe it's actually the fastest in the game now. So our first ban of the game will actually be Abathur here from Tricked Esports on BOE. Has Abathur made a resurgence?
Yes, definitely. Abathur is currently played quite a lot in Europe. Europe always had a huge affinity for Abathur compared to other regions, and this year is not going to be an exception to that rule. So at this point, Abathur is actually a hero that is played a lot in Europe, and I feel this will probably one of the big differences between, let's say, Europe and North America this season as well, because from what I know so far, and again, I might be completely wrong on that point, North America doesn't really have that high priority in him, but in Europe, it's definitely a big thing. Genji hasn't really changed, is still one of the heroes to watch out for when it comes to the bans, usually banned as the second ban in this, as we see in this case, or by the second team, since you want to deny to your opponent, but that leaves Greymane open, and in this case, Strict immediately jumps upon the chance and takes it.
Still already a different world though. In the past, we saw a lot of tanks being banned out back in 2017. Now we're seeing these damage dealers picked up right away. Greymane on the right side, and now Li Ming into Arthas. Arthas can be wonderful on this Battleground for controlling that Immortal phase and really holding down the choke points, and of course, the area that has fog popped up. But Li Ming bringing in that poke that can help them win the Immortal race if they can buy enough time, and Arthas already alludes to that.
Yeah, and Arthas is also, not only is he really great against Greymane in particular, but he's also one of the most played tanks at this point. He's really one of the staples that we have for a lot of teams on these Battlegrounds. He's absolutely fantastic when it comes to survivability.
Sure.
And he can just chase down opponents. He's really good as the offlaner as well, can play him as the main tank. So he's once again a draft pick early on that gives you a lot of flexibility in the draft.
Yeah, that's actually where my question was going to go there. With Arthas being picked up this early, would you believe that we're probably going to get a second tank with BOE, or have we seen him main tank a lot in the past for scrims?
I mean, both is definitely possible. It's a bit similar to what we've seen with ETC happening, not for the same reasons, as the main point for ETC as an early pick was always the ults that he could take. You could use him as that global presence with Stage Dive or with Mosh Pit, but he was always a hero that could fill both roles, and the same is true for Arthas here too. We have seen him in some off-lane scenarios, but he can also be the main tank if you feel that you just need a melee assassin on the off-lane, pack up a little bit more of a punch in there. He's great for the lockdown, and that alone already helps Li Ming as a good setup to get the combo in.
That Howling Blast coming in. On the other side, we do get the Tyrael and the Lucio pickup. And I've heard lately that Lucio is actually a pretty good hero, so him being here on BOE, not a bad pickup at all.
Yeah, I heard that too. Lucio seems to be pretty good. Has been for a while, actually.
Pretty weird secret that seems to be surfing as of late. Thank you so much for that, Caldor. Lucio, Also, just probably one of the best healers you can get in the game right now, mostly because of his movement speed. A lot of members look at his healing and kind of freak out a little bit when it comes to his healing, but it's about the ability to engage into a fight, but also disengage. Lucio giving you that control for an entire team of 5 is just unmatched by any other healer right now.
Yeah, it's also, the problem that you have with him is, of course, that there's a lack of cleanse that has been abused in the Korean HGC games earlier on with Judgment and with Hinterland Blast. Not really something that you would expect to see every single game, but it showcases that there are a few points where Lucio doesn't excel that could be exploited in draft by teams if they're willing to run such a high risk. And that's something that Korea did. In this case, now, on the other hand, Lucio is always going to be fantastic. Let's not forget that Lucio is also extremely good when paired with Arthur, since he just denies one of the weaknesses that Arthur oftentimes has, which is the mobility and engage potential. So trick picking Lucio up already makes sure that the Zealots can't run Lucio on their part.
Interestingly, a Nubarek ban here. It looks like Tricked Esport wanted to prevent any type of web coming out there, maybe stopping Tyrael from getting engaged that he wants to. So Nubarek being taken away, but typically that's left up with Li Ming being around on the field here, as Li Ming can actually counter that. So it wouldn't be an issue there for Tricked.
Yeah, one of the things on the other hand is that if you go in and let's say you get a quick cocoon off against Lucio, then you're in a setup where Lucio can't use the sound barrier, and then with Arthur's just moving through, it's also really tricky to burn the cocoon down. So if the entire team engages and then cocoon comes in, it can be a huge problem. And we had a lot of blow-up compositions also last year that centered around a Nubarak with a good cocoon and then try to follow up with a stun. Again, points a target onto the hero that gets caught for Li Ming to exploit. Now we have Hanzo, we talked about him, great on the battleground here, but you can already see in priority that he has at this point that he is farther down in the draft.
Sure.
He is extremely strong. He can be very mobile if played correctly, but at the same time, one of the problems that you have is that Genji, for example, if he makes it to the draft, can really threaten him. He has a low hit point pool. Greymane with Go for the Throat can be an obstacle as well. So normally, at least in the European scene, you see him a little bit farther down in as a draft priority.
For me, if I pause this draft and look at it right now, I'm actually leaning towards Zealots a lot. They have a wonderful setup here for BOE. The Li Ming poke is great. Arthas for the control. Sonya, one of the best laners that you can get. And also, great DPS against the Immortal. She's able to peel off. And then you have Hanzo here that can move into the W build and absolutely shred the Immortal. They win this race hands down so far. How is Tricked Esports going to manage the fights here?
Yeah, Tricked is going for Leoric right now. I'm not quite sure if that's going to do enough for them. We have them with Falstad and with Leoric, and seeing Falstad together with Tyrael here is already something that makes me smile a bit after we saw Korea early on. I'm not sure if they really looked at the Korean games and they said, huh, you know what?
That might work.
This is actually a good idea. Let's try that too. It would be really funny if they did, if we would actually see Judgment and Hinterland Blast here, because that could be one of the tools that you can use against Hanzo played correctly. But the Zealots hasn't taken the support yet, so they can still look at this and say like, okay guys, listen, we obviously need a cleanse here just to be on the safe side, so what do you do for now? And I agree with what you said. Really like their draft. They have a lot of pressure against the Immortal. They have very good camp clear and wave clear as well. So right now their draft is very, very strong.
Just a question of what support they want to move into. The reworked Malfurion is here and available. Kerazim works too.
I would have said you can go for Rhaegar at this point.
True.
Rhaegar seems good. He's still played highly drafted, played a lot.
Double
we have,
tank.
as I said, Kerazim could be played as well, but it is Rhaegar. So you have everything that you need in this particular lineup. And that draft has become even stronger, so at this point you have the Lightning Shield to also help out a little bit. And yeah, right now, draft for the Zealots. Looks good.
Looks wonderful here. In fact, let's go ahead and talk about it. Our favorite game here at HGC. Who wins the draft, Caldor?
From the draft alone, I would say Zealots.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit curious to see how exactly that Tyrael and Falstad combo plays out on the other side. I mean, I wouldn't really expect at this point that you just drop all your eggs into one basket and say you're going for Hinterland Blast and Judgment, as we saw Tempest do in Korea.
Yeah.
At this point, Sanctification, I would say, and also going for the Disengage with Mighty Gust become a little bit more likely. But overall, the draft that we have for Zealot seems very strong. It's a matter of execution. We haven't seen the teams yet this season. They have, of course, poured all their time into practicing. But right now, I would give Zealots the edge.
Yeah, the Dragon Zero coming in, the Mighty Gust can make sure to keep that Sonya and Arthas off of your team if they get the engage they want. But right Right now, I completely agree here with Calidor. Zealots are just looking wonderful, and I want to know how Tricked Esports is going to be able to manage this. They have the ability to get off, obviously here, with Greymane and, of course, Falstad jumping on one target when Tyrael finds that lockdown whenever it may come in. Of course, Holy Ground being something that can be picked up later on. But will they get that far into BOE to the point where they can actually make those big plays and be able to handle themselves here? With BOE being a battleground that if you get the first couple of Immortals, you could run all the way down to a keep.
And we have Arthas in the mix as well. We don't see too often,
Syndragosa.
but you can go for Syndragosa. If you really snowball the early game and you find yourself in a position already where you are several levels ahead and hit level 10 early with a strong Immortal, there's always this one argument to be made that you can with Syndragosa go straight for a keep or maybe even for an early core. So that definitely gives you an option. We don't see too much, but it pops up every now and then.
Well, it's time to start 2018 here as game number 1 in this best of 5 series is ready to go. Zealots taking on Tricked Esports. Will Zealots get the win here, or will Tricked Esports answer back with the hashtag #GetTricked?
First game of the year here in HGC, and to the left side we have the Zealots right now with on Hanzo. We see Shad currently on Rega playing the support now in his new role. Chris at the same time is now playing Li Ming once again. Zarmany of course on the offlaner. He's playing Sonya. And then we have Mopsio on Arthas on the main tank.
On the right side in the red, Tricked Esports. Make will be playing your Falstad. Crosby on Greymane. Alex at Pro G playing Leo. Rimmer playing Tyrael. And Grandpa Kit will be playing the Lucio. Now, before things start out, I'm keeping my eye on Make. Make was one of my favorite players last year to watch. However, when he played Falstad, a little disappointed. He missed out on some major flies that needed to happen, and of course, a couple of disengages. So I'm going to watch for him here to see if he has leveled up his Falstad play, as he's had a few months here to tune him.
For me, the range damage players on the side of the Zealots are definitely the ones to keep an eye on. When we're looking at Hanzo played by ADRD or Li Ming played by Chris, that's something to really watch for here. At this point, both of the teams with heavy aggression on the lane. Down to the bottom of the map, we're seeing the Zealots moving in with 4, trying to get those towers early on in the extra experience. Alex is trying to hold them back as much as he can, but of course in this 1 versus 4 setup, his main job is to soak the experience. And the same goes for the top lane, where Zarmany trying to hold back the onslaught of Tricked Esports.
So far, Trick being able to get through those walls, breaking down a little bit of damage on the fort. Sonya having a really hard time there clearing out that lane. Chef will play passively and let the fort do it all. Same thing for Leo on the bottom side. And with it all said and done, looks like our teams are done with the pushing, as we'll have Chris come on up to assist on the top side. They're trying to get that 4v4 back in their favor.
Now, when we're talking about the team compositions and about the team fight abilities, then Zealots, they have a very nice setup here where it's really tough in a 5 versus 5 battle for Tricked to really take those battles and win them. They need to sync everything up perfectly if they want to do that. Talking about the sanctification here, perfectly timed sound barriers as well. But we have the global factor on the side of Tricked, and that is definitely a huge aspect for them, where they can try and play with Falstad, cater more towards the map, and force fights that they really want. Because on objective battles, the Zealots have the better clear on the Immortals, and that is something that Trick definitely has to watch out for. Even though they run Greymane, overall, if you look at the 5 that they have accumulated here, it just can't measure up to what Zealots have.
Now, this is what I was curious about. Mercenary, how they would be grabbed when it comes to the pro scene. And so far, Zealots has been on top of that. 130, they grabbed it. Tricked Esports is the same on the top side. Will this be a trend that we're going to see in every game? Mercenary camps being prioritized, making sure to get heroes that can burn those down by themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are a couple of different maps, of course, where you're trying to time the camps properly. As we can see here, the Shaman camps are also taken a bit later, just simply because both teams are trying to time them properly with the objective itself.
Sure.
But overall, with the changes that we have seen into the game, there is definitely a priority on the mercenary camps that the teams are going to go for. And especially with a well-timed night camp, you can execute a very, very strong push. Curse is another really good map where you can set up really, really cool mercenary pushes while you're waiting for the objective and trying to get a tribute or maybe even a curse.
Now, you already touched on this earlier. Falstad being the global here for Tricked Esport should be able to sit on an off lane and try to prevent those Shamblers from being effective, but Zealots to mitigate this, they actually did a pretty clever 3-man gank on the bottom side, trying to get Make caught and trying to take him out. Make was able to barrel roll away, but you can see Zealots are aware of that global, how powerful it can be, and are trying to do their best to put pressure on their so they can't get much value out of it. And so far, they're doing a great job. They're even getting some damage on the fort.
Yeah, Zealots with a heavy push here at the bot lane right now. Also want to quickly highlight that Hansa at this point goes for Redemption on level 1, so it's more of an auto attack focus that we're currently seeing for him, which has been the most dominant build in most of the European games thus far. There are a couple of different ones that you can of course go for with him, but this is so far the most successful that we have seen, at least seen. Outside of that, most of the builds still pretty standard. We're having Rhyme block talent on Arthur's taken on level 1, still seeing him spec on level 4, then immediately into the Frozen Tempest with Frozen Wastes here. First kill as Li Ming goes down inside of the Zealots, chased down by Lucio, so Tricked with the first blood in the game.
The strength of Lucio being put on full display right there as they chase down the Li Ming and pick her off. Trick to take the opportunity to poke on the Immortal slightly here on the top side, while Zealots are attempting to soak as much as they can. Leave Sonya on the top, as well as Arthas on the bottom until he rotates in. And ADRD just finished his redemption quest, meaning he'll get some more auto attacks in, as it will be faster on the attack speed.
Exactly, so at this point, getting all the redemption stacks for himself. And we can still see that Sonya has made her way over to the Immortal. So the pressure that nearly every single hero has against the objective is something that Trick needs to be really careful about. They got the kill against Li Ming, but they couldn't fully capitalize on it because we just have too much of race pressure coming from Zealots. So at this point, Trick still a little bit more defensive. They have the lead in experience and therefore a temporary lead in talents as well. But the Zealots still in a decent spot and waiting for an opportunity to maybe lock someone like Market down with Mopsio's Arthas.
They would love to, because Tricked Esport is doing their best to stretch them thin. They even set up a gank on the top side. They're going straight for Zarmany. Zarmany behind his fort, but it's not enough to defend him with the minions showing up. Zarmany getting low, Drain Hope hitting, Lucio to help out. There's the attack, and there will be the kill as Sonya falls.
Yeah, they're diving deep. And in the meantime, the Zealots, they haven't even tried to save him. Instead, they just went straight for the Immortal. In experience, they're falling behind, though, and that is a problem. It was a great kill by Tricked, and it was the second one that they got in this game. Diving the fort here allowed them to take Sonya down. The death timers are still fairly low, though, and we have Greymane now on the right side trying to take the Immortal down, but the rest of the Zealots is starting to move in, and as we said before, they have the pressure against the objective.
Trick trying to play defense here. Make on the front line here, dropping down the hammerings, trying to keep Shad and Mopsio back, but they don't mind. They turn around, focus down the Immortal, and Zealots will be able to get the first Immortal of the game. A little under half shields on that Immortal, but still nice and healthy to push.
We also have a talent adjustment with the Immortal Coil now used on Arthas as the level 7, so he's going to spam that out a bit more aggressively and will still receive the heals. That helps him, of course, also trying to just continuously get a little bit of health back during those fights. He is being played as the main tank here. But with Zealots having that much rage pressure against the objective, they can now push through the top. Sonya still at the bottom. Falset is getting in range, could fly in and turn the top fight into a 5 versus 4. But so far, we're just seeing the experience of the bot lane instead.
Just add on that point, that level 7 pickup is nice against a Leoric. You don't want to be up in that front line against that Leo, get hit with a Drain Hope. And if you do, you want to be able to kite backwards and get some healing pop in there. So that's why we see that adjustment on that level 7. The fort lives, though, the Immortal. Not able to push on through and get much done here, as Zealots were unable to do much.
Yeah, Tricked is really playing the experience card here. They're doing fairly well with that. Having 9.5 already allows them to go into the early level 10 and then maybe even exploit the early heroic ability. So that's definitely something that the Zealots need to be careful about. As we said before, their entire setup is insanely strong when it comes to a 5 versus 5 team fight, and also when we're looking at any kind of race against the Immortal itself. But Tricked is doing really well just maintaining that experience lead. They have great rotations on the map. They always threaten the offlane. You've seen them with 2 kills already, and Chris barely got out of this one. Tricked again set up a little bit of a trap, and if Chris moved out a bit further, it could have potentially killed him here.
Falset's already on the bottom side, defending the mercenary push. They're in such a great spot here. Tricked Esports can call upon that Falstat at any point. Zealots, however, are about to get level 10. Will they use that as a moment to try and force a fight against Tricked Esports, or will Tricked continue to get these rotations that they're really pulling off well and prevent Zealots from ever getting the engage?
I mean, right now it's an entire level lead that we already have, and that's mainly because Zealots realize that they need to defend with 5 up at the top. And now finally Arthas has made his way back down to the bot lane, where Make already started to push in against the towers quite heavily. And that's one of the main reasons why Trick now has that level lead, because they were able to always have a hero on lane thanks to that global advantage that they have here. And in just another 10 seconds, the are both going to spawn, which both teams again try to time properly, so they push us onto the lane. But Trick is the team that will have the easier time defending against it because of false stat and then still join the fight.
And with Alex on the top side, someone will always have to be there to respawn, or that keep wall is going down to Leo. With Neil Peasants being that level 4 pickup, very easy for him to push the lane. Zealots trying to set up another gank, but they've done this 4 or 5 times in a row. Tricked Esport knows it's coming. They're already there for reaction and always escaping.
Also with Go for the Throat on Greymane, this is a big difference between Curse Bullet and Go for the Throat. Curse Bullet usually means that you want to target the front line, you want to target the tank, you're trying to blow them up. But with Go for the Throat, it's Hanzo and leaning, it's the backline that you're focusing on. Alex here with Marshall Black King, here comes the sound barrier. Shad goes down as we have Sanctification used by Tyrael as well. The 5 versus 4, but Arthur's moving in again in the counter kill against Greymane. Well done by the Zealots. Zarmany is low though, and so is Chris. Both of them need to retreat here as Rema even jumps in once again, looking to see if he can maybe confirm a second kill for the team.
But Tricked, all said and done, are able to get a better trade there with them not losing a healer. They're able to pop back and get some damage on top of this Immortal. ADRD though is threatening more damage here with Mopsio coming in with a flank, and they will chase away Tricked from the area of the Immortals, and we'll have to have everyone back up and heal on up. But nice gust there from Make coming in and finding Rhaegar. Nice and included in a fight, and they pick him off.
The kill against Rhaegar was of course perfect, but now we're again in that race scenario, and you can already see that the Zealots are playing to the strength of their composition. They get again the halftime show, Tricked half a level ahead, but it doesn't really do anything for them at this point. They don't have the extra talent yet, but they go for Mopsio. Ancestral comes through, Zarmany all the way up at the front, March of the Black King getting massive value here, and Sonya goes down, Tricked with kill number 4 in the game.
Cleanse comes out there. Make falls to ADRD, working in the auto text there from the Hanzo. Hanzo chasing forward, starting to put some damage on the Immortal, and Tricked Esports will do their best to defend, but it's a 3-on-4 at the moment. Grandpa taking some damage here on the right side as ADRD answers back. Rimmer diving forward. A Dragon's Arrow is going to miss, so Rimmer gets the sound barrier to stay alive, and this fight is a tough one.
Shad is low. He could fall here, but so could Crosby, and Crosby goes down as Rhaegar escapes. Sonya back to business, and again it's the Immortal pressure that Tricked has trouble dealing with. The Zealots move in and they're about to confirm another Immortal for the blue team here. Job well done by Team Zealots. Tricked should be able to hit the level 13 talent soon. But it's a really interesting game that we're currently seeing here, and the big problem for Tricked once again is that they don't have enough pressure against the objective. Even with kills, they can't beat Zealots when it comes to the Immortal race. So they always have to send Greymane back in the fight and actually battle it out. And so far, it has started to look a little bit better for the Zealots here.
And we're all tied up in experience, but Zealots has the lead with the Immortal pushing on the top side. Bringing all 5 to the top. Rimmer will be here to catch the gank coming on the left side, and Zarmany will be able to put some damage in. But Tricked Esports now facing the task of the Immortal that's pushing on their fort.
Yeah, and this time, as the objective scales, the fort is of course going to fall. And the question is, how much more can the Zealots get right now? ADRD also with Hanzo the entire time, trying to see if he can maybe get another really good stun in. We're having him at this point, of course, on the level 10, still with the Dragon's Arrow here. We're also seeing in terms of damage output that he's currently with 38,000 all the way up at the top. Leoric with 21k a second. Crosby is pretty telling. He's at 18,000 damage right now. He's been focusing a lot of his time on the Immortal hit points. So he hasn't really committed that much to the damage output against the opponent's team. And that's just something that is starting to become a bit of an issue. Where do you send Greymane? In the fight against the Immortal? How do you deal with those situations when we have the standoff in the middle of the map?
It's been difficult, Trick, but they need to find a way to get a pick right away. With that sharpened arrow at level 7 coming in there for Hanzo, burning down the armor on opponents. Eventually, Zealots, through pure war of attrition, will be able to get the victories as they burn down opponents.
I really like the way that Trick moves on the map, though. This is something that I enjoyed a lot throughout the entire game. The way that they've been trying to set up kills. We saw that Great Gust, for example, earlier. They've always attempted to trap the solo laners, which worked out several times for them. So when it comes to movements on the map, them trying to play to the advantages of their global hero or simply trying to catch someone off guard, it was always well done by them. But now as the game continues and the heroes scale into the late game, the Zealots are starting to look a bit stronger and a little bit more controlled and disciplined during those fights.
And Trick is also running out of room with their fort on the bottom gone, the fort on the top side. If Zealot's able to push back and get the waves going into their favor, Trick can't go for those ganks as aggressively as they did before. However, with 13 hitting here, your favorite Leo talent is finally here and available, so that should help out in team fights.
Can we not make that a meme?
You don't have to make it a meme at all, man. Just saying it's your favorite talent there. Ominous Wrath bringing in, or Wraith, bringing in the great damage reduction that you want to pull off. Great against Hanzo, Sonya, and Li Ming if he's able to get that spooky ghost on those 3 members.
Damage reduction, how about it? Is that our Lord and Savior, Ominous Wraith?
There it is, once again showing up, and it will save Tricked Esport. If you believe hard enough, Caldor.
Well, they have to hit Hanzo for that because he is bringing the pain at this point. 41,000 damage. Just to give you a bit of an idea, the second highest damage dealer in the game after Hanzo is Leoric on the side of Tricked, and he has 23,000. So that's roughly half of what we're currently seeing pulled out by Hanzo himself. Once again, the teams are looking at level 16. We don't have the talent yet, but a bit of an early start in the Immortal race in favor of Esports as they are moving on and take a few of the hit points off. But of course now, Falstead at the bot lane can deliver that extra experience that would push Tricked into the next talent. And that advantage alone might be enough for them to force another fight here. And the Zealots know that too. They're splitting Li Ming now up to the top to make sure that they're not falling too far behind in XP.
Yep, 16 right around the corner for our teams. Poke coming in from Zealots. Hanzo dropping in the arrow here and there, trying to chunk the Immortal slightly. Tricked Esports in the lead right now in the Immortal race. But Zealots, with 5 grouping up here soon, should be able to start answering back. They're going to need their Li Ming, who finally just pushed in the top lane.
Level 16, any second now, and still a poke going on. ADRD, of course, can always provide vision as well, and that's another great asset to have here. Lucio is trying to do the same thing with the boombox, just setting up a few anchor points for the team so that they know where exactly the heroes come in. But once again, Hanzo is just absolutely fantastic to scout out the area and to make sure that they know always what's happening here. So it's really difficult for Tricked to get these setups at the side, these flanks that they want to push the pressure on either Hanzo or, for example, Rhaegar, as they did in one of the earlier fights.
Sonya setting up her own flank here, coming on the side, goes straight in for Alex Aproji, will chunk him down to less than a quarter health. The Zealots may have found their opportunity to start moving on in to get a little bit of poke in. Zarmany helping you out in the holy ground here and dangerous, but not enough to lock somebody in.
And the poke is just fantastic for the Zealots. The entire time, Li Ming combos, ADRD moving in, weaving in a few attacks. And Mopsio and Zarman here just trying to keep everybody safe. So Trick hasn't really pulled the trigger yet. And this could lead us into the halftime show being won by the Zealots. Their poke is just superior at this point. Shad is also doing a fantastic job keeping himself always in the background, making sure that he can't be the first target of Trick, but at the same time staying close to everyone, close enough to throw out the Ancestral if needed. And here comes Trick as they're moving in. Zarmany in a bit of trouble. Shat is in range, but here comes the potential. No, the Sank comes out, and also Lucio with his own ult. Immediately you save Crosby, but Greyman is low. That's most of the damage gone. Leoric attempting to move out here, but there's the kill confirmed as the Zealots move in and drop the Skeleton King.
Halftime show is here, and Zealots have a nice lead 5-4 as they're able to pick off Leo. But the big trade-off here, too, is that Tricked Esports burned a number of heroics, Sound Barrier, Sanctification, as well as Mighty Gust. Mighty Gust won't be up for 30 seconds as Zealots take the opportunity to seize forward, start putting some damage on top of the Immortal, and Tricked is doing everything they can to delay so Alex can come back.
They can play this really patient. At this point, we're actually having Sonya moving up to the top, trying to make sure that she catches the waves that have been accumulated. And then we're starting to push against the gate. And Trick immediately sees that and starts to move in for the Immortal, trying to race it down. But here come the Zealots. They're trying to defend. They're going in. They want to go for Leoric. Leoric nearly down, turns around. Marshall the Black King is being used, but Alex is still taken down by the Immortal here. Zarmany popping Wrath and going deep as we have Sonya now moving to the top. Zealots once again with the attempted race against the Immortal. They're close, and as Crosby goes down, Trick's chances of winning this one are dropping even further.
ADRD with a point-blank arrow to keep Mopsy alive, gets the heals out, the Immortal gets burned down, and now Zealots will get the 3rd Immortal of the game, and they are looking for a keep here if they'll be able to push forward. Leo goes straight to the top side to try to distract us. Up here, trying to defend this lane, try and buying time for his team.
And the thing is that, once again, when you look at the early game and how the game changed towards the mid and late game now, Zealots have started to pick up the pace because early on, Trick could really work with those rotations. They could get those isolation kills that we've been mentioning. But now that we have the standoff in the middle, it's really difficult for them to pull it off. Too much vision tools on the side of the Zealots, and it usually ends up in 5 versus 5 fights where the Zealots are just better equipped or are just a plain out race for the Immortal, and there's just too much damage on the Zealot side. And they are going in once again, trying to go for the key, but here comes the Falstad fly into the background. Cleanse seconds already used down here at the bottom. AD already needs to move out on Hanzo, and he does. Shat is in trouble though, and gets annihilated. Make is low on HP, but Trick is doing whatever they can to turn this around. They lose Grave, and that's a blow against the team.
Greymane down, Make on the backside. Howling Blast connects on Make. That will be easy cleanup there for Zealots as they keep moving forward. They'll be able to finally take this keep as a reward, but can they also take the game? It looks like it as they start running towards the core, full on health and ready to go.
2 heroes down, and they're definitely going for it. At this point, they want another kill, and they get it. Tyrael is down. Here comes once again Alex with the March of the Black King, but it's already too late to stop the pain train. The Zealots are moving for the core, and they take down Tricked Esports in game number 1 of HGC Europe 2018.
Zealots getting their first victory here in 2018 as they'll go up 1-0 here over Tricked Esports, but it really seemed like level 16 was the big moment here for Team Zealots. Flawless technique and mirror ball helping out the immortal race, but also in kill potential. Every time they found a target, they were able to delete them right away. Even losing Rhaegar in the beginning of that fight didn't matter for Zealots. They still got the kill.
Yeah, and it was actually really interesting because the first thing that happened when Falsa was flying in and Shat realized that he would be a priority target, he threw out everything that he had. He made sure that Hanzo was cleansed as well so that he could jump out. And Hanzo was the main damage dealer by far. He ended up with a 78,000 damage against heroes. And again, the second damage dealer ended up to be Greymane with 32k. So the difference between the two here is pretty telling. The lineup we saw for the Zealots for this first draft was absolutely fantastic. As they did before, AD bring in new ideas, helping with the drafting as well. It's definitely paid off in this first game.
So do you think going into game number 2, get a ban on both Shimada brothers, Genji and Hanzo?
I'm not quite sure if you really need to go for that right away, but I feel that the draft that we saw on the side of Trick just didn't really cater properly towards the map and to counter the opponent's team.
Sure.
Again, I like the way that they rotated at the start. They created a couple of really good opportunities for themselves. If it would have been a different map, I think they could have continued that towards the late game and maybe played the card with their global, forced that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But for this map in particular, and also going up against this much race potential on the side of the Zealots, they just didn't have the time to play the macro game properly. So they were always under pressure, had to move Falstad into the 5-man, and then Zealots just could poke away. At some point, Trick was forced to pull the trigger and say, okay, we need to go in, we need to go for the fight. And in the 5 versus 5, they were always at a disadvantage.
Yeah, it really seemed like Poke and Vision versus Holy Ground catching somebody off towards the late game was the only play that was there for Tricked Esports, or the all-in Mighty Gus that we saw, and it just did not pan out there. So